Originally, Mr. X didn't exist.
Yep, that's right. In a 1998 interview, developers elaborate on the early development of Resident Evil 2. They were about 70% finished with the game, primarily known as Resident Evil 1.5, and then it was completely scrapped. In that scrapped version, there was absolutely, positively no Mr. X, canonically known as Tyrant T00. Resident Evil 2 director Hideki Kamiya explains, "We originally had no plans to bring the Tyrant back, since he was the final boss of the first game. I was saying we should make him the perfect, invincible Tyrant this time." Now look, there are many interesting early concepts of Mr. X pictured here, circa 1997, and the idea always seemed to have a big dude in a trench coat. Can anything else scare the kids away? Mr. X with a Cyclops visor or some high-tech visual receptors that go in line with what the devs wanted Mr. X to be, an extremely evil, secret spy/detective on a mission to retrieve the G-Virus. This also explains the trench coat, and if you look closely, Mr. X was given a plasma rifle of some sort. Imagine the horror if Mr. X actually had a weapon besides. So there was the concept, a secretive figure whose monster side would gradually become more and more exposed as the game progressed, and damage inflicted by the player. Take a look at these more monstrous designs with, what is that? We even see some concept art of X with an even more human appearance with hair and a lab coat, a complete Jekyll and Hyde contrast. Hell, there's even Mr. X with a mustache. And a fun little Easter egg, it was this piece of concept art that supposedly inspired Mr. X's modern fedora look in the remake. These are very interesting concepts, but what was the inspiration?
So, I mean, what was the inspiration behind a Tyrant for this game?
そうですね、当時やっぱ映画流行ってて、このターミネーター2とかが、はい、みんな大好きだったので、結構そこにインスピレーション選んでます。
Yeah, so I think everyone recalls back to, I believe it was 1992, Terminator 2 had come out. So you could probably see some of the influences from the Terminator himself in Tyrant.
The inspiration behind Mr. X is none other than the Terminator, which makes a lot of sense. A nearly unstoppable killing machine on a mission with little to no means of distracting it from its objective. Even the code names for both of these killing machines are similar, T00 and T800. It was at this point in development that Mr. X was made, and a Tyrant would be included in the final product. But that didn't mean there weren't balancing concerns for Mr. X, as some feared it was too overpowered or too underpowered. Noboru Sugimura, writer of Resident Evil 2, explains, "That's why I was also against the idea of having the Tyrant drop bullets when he's defeated. We must not give players a reason to seek out fights with enemies." Hideki Kamiya also agreed with Mr. X being too underpowered, stating, "I didn't want to give the Tyrant those bullet drops either. However, defeating him uses up a lot of ammo, so it was done out of consideration for beginners. Finding the right difficulty balance is tough. Personally, I think Resident Evil 2 was too easy. But when you take into account new players, I think this was the right thing to do." Sugimura adds, "That will probably continue to be an issue for us. If we're going to preserve the true character of Resident Evil, we may not be able to continue to open the gates to new players like that." Overall, there were disagreements between devs regarding Mr. X's mechanics and him being too easy. Do you guys agree, or are they being too harsh? We've looked at the basis for Mr. X's existence, design, and mechanics, but a very interesting tidbit from this interview also revealed Mr. X's motivation in the story was subject to change. Sugimura states, "We realized that making the Tyrant so strong would render the existence of the G-Virus meaningless. To solve that problem, we came up with the idea of the Tyrant having a mission to retrieve the G-Virus. Also, one of the consequences of having players go through the same scenario twice was that, by the second time, they're used to things, and it's too easy. For that reason, we decided to have the Tyrant appear in Scenario B as a way to raise the difficulty. This proved vital to Mr. X's relevancy in the story because it would have made zero sense to make him the big bad of the entire game." Devs not only toned Mr. X's mechanics down, but also his involvement in the story. By making Mr. X an errand boy for an even bigger entity other than himself, it made total sense, and that's an amazing job by the writers to have that self-awareness not to make Mr. X overpowered in that sense. How would you guys have felt without Mr. X? Would you miss him? Would you wear a fedora in his name? No, don't ever wear a fedora. Comment down below your thoughts. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more nostalgia. Until next time, stay single.